Well, as we're getting to know one another, I've been with you now for almost 2 years. Something I want to disclose about myself, if you don't already know, I love the ocean. I love the ocean, I love boats, I love being on the ocean. I grew up sailing and I still love it. I remember being on a sailboat some years ago, it was quite a few years ago, without radar, and we were in a pretty thick fog trying to get back into Halifax Harbor. It was long before GPS was common, so it was quite a challenge to find our way back into the dock. I remember listening to the boys trying to figure out where they were, and we had a depth sounder, so we could try to figure out by the contours on the chart where about we were as we tried to get safely back to dock. And I admit I was very thankful when we made it back safely. I thought about this because the question that came to my mind as I prepared this homily is, have you ever felt lost? Have you ever felt lost? Have you ever felt spiritually lost? Or have you felt lost in life in general and just struggled to find purpose? In the gospel reading today, Jesus saw how lost the people of Israel had become. Jesus described them as being like sheep without a shepherd. I guess wandering aimlessly, just looking for enough to get by on. It's certainly not a picture of people who are thriving. Jesus sees that they are lost, helpless, and harassed. Now, in the cultural context of the time, the people of Israel were occupied by the Romans, who had absolutely no respect for their culture or for their religion. They were indeed literally harassed, helpless, and lost. When Jesus saw this reality, he had compassion for them. He had compassion for them. Now, the Greek word for compassion is splankna, and a direct transliteration would be bowels. That's where it is. You've probably heard me say this before. It literally means, the verb form is used here, it literally means to be moved in one's bowels. And isn't that appropriate? For we still have the expression, when someone says something awful to you, it's like a punch in the gut, right? It's that deep seat of emotion that wells up. So Jesus responds from this deep place in his gut, this deep place of compassion. And sometimes, is it not true that what we receive sometimes feels like a bit of a punch in the gut? Don't we sometimes think that we have unlimited resources, whether they be physical resources, emotional or spiritual resources? And then we get this proverbial rug pulled out from underneath us, a punch in the gut, a life-changing diagnosis, an accident, a financial setback, a devastating loss, as many of us know all too well. Any number of things are possible in the fragility of this human condition. The important thing for us to note here is that we're all a little bit lost. It isn't about us and them, those of us who are lost and those of us who are found. The truth is, to a small degree, to varying degrees, we're all a little bit lost. And sometimes it takes a jolt. Sometimes it takes a punch in the gut to get you to focus on what is truly important so you can get back on track and to heal in ways you didn't even know you needed to heal. And I find it so interesting, who does Jesus choose to give authority to so as to get on with this ministry of a much needed healing and to help people find their way? Not those who had power in society at the time, not the well-educated, not those with advanced degrees in change management or theology, as good as all things are, but he chose a group of folks from Galilee. Galilee is the modern equivalent of Jesus going to Sheet Harbor and saying, they'll save you. Like, I say that Archbishop Curry is from Sheet Harbor, so I doubt he's listening, but I'll make sure he knows I said that. Why would Jesus choose these people? Why would he choose a bunch of fishermen with absolutely no social power whatsoever, no worldly authority whatsoever, and give them authority to help the lost? Well, the first point is that out of their own freedom, they made the decision to follow Jesus. They left fishing and dedicated their lives to following Jesus. That's the first and very brief point. Now, allow me to work with a metaphor here a little bit that I want you to consider. Fishermen have to consider what's going on beneath the surface. Where are the good fishing grounds? What's the current doing? What's the depth of water? What's the height of tide? Where are the dangers? They ponder these things. They learn about these things, and they grow skilled in determining what's going on beneath the surface. So too with the spiritual life. Whatever is breaking on the surface of your life is caused by something that is underneath. Sometimes it's buried deep down below, but it impacts what's going on in the surface. I mean, I know many of you have sat out looking over the ocean, and if there's a shoal out there, even on a calm day with a gentle swell, you can see the waves breaking over there. What may bubble up on the surface, I'll just use one example. What may bubble up on the surface as anger may be caused by unmet hopes, control, hurt, fear, to mention only a few. So on the surface, one may seem angry, but beneath the surface, there's a deep wound that hasn't healed. And grief can complicate all these things. And I just want to say, I know I'm talking in a parish that has been through a difficult process of amalgamation where churches have been closed. And there is a grieving that is real about all of this. Grief can complicate all of these things. Or what about addictions? Addictions are profoundly complex and manifest themselves in many, many ways. So determining what is really going on under the surface that manifests itself in these destructive patterns of addiction is key to understand of what we see on the surface as addictions. Many argue that addictions have a spiritual root that comes from not being connected to God and not being connected to others. And so the remedy for this is a restoration of one's image of God. God who is compassionate, God who sees that you are lost, God who comes alongside of you in compassion. So restoring one's image with God, restoring one's image of oneself, and a deep connection with others. Teasing this out in more detail is important, but beyond the scope of this homily today. But there are many resources out there. And I want to recommend one book to you, which is a reflection, a spiritual reflection on the 12 steps. It's called Breathing Underwater. It's by Father Richard Rohr. And it's a beautiful reflection on the 12 steps. And even if you don't need a 12-step program or don't think you need a 12-step program, it's a really lovely reflection on the spirituality of surrender. So there's so much work that is needed in this field today, so much work. And there are so many things going on just beneath the surface of our lives that are causing many of us to live in slavery, not in the freedom that Jesus offers us. We need helpers, we need healers, we need disciples to get on with the compassionate work of Christ. As Jesus said in the gospel today, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Now, I want to celebrate a couple things. Well, there's so much good going on. I can stand up here and talk about the challenges all day long, for sure. But I got to tell you, what my ears hear in the run of a day, run of a week, there is so much positive going on, I don't even know where to start. So I'll just start with a couple of things. Even in our little parish, in this corner of the world, comfortable corner of the world, in today's day and age, with all of the challenges, with dwindling numbers, Jesus continues to call people, and people continue to say yes. And so right here, I see Gregory Vess is sitting right here. I'm just honored as your pastor to announce today that Gregory Vess has been picked up to go to seminary in September. So isn't that lovely? Yeah. This comes from a place of not only his own beautiful connection with Christ, but your role as a community of faith in helping form him and his family, his parents, his brothers, his friends. It's beautiful. And also, right in this little parish, the bishop has also invited two men to begin the process of discernment for the permanent diaconate. And so I know Ross Lawrence is here. Ross, can you stand up as well? Ross is beginning a 4-year process. Ross is one of two. The second is Tom Vess, who's actually Gregory's father, to become, I know, it's beautiful. Tom was here at the 4 p.m. Mass, and is Carolyn here? Yeah, there's Carolyn, his wife. So because of their needs at home, they alternate who comes to which Mass. So Tom was at the 4 p.m. Mass where he sings in the choir. And anyway, it's a beautiful thing. So right here, there's 3 potential callings that they have had the humble courage to say yes to right here in our little parish. It's very, very beautiful. But also, since I spoke earlier about addictions, I want you to know that not all ministry is, of course, ordained ministry. There are many, many beautiful ministries going on here, and I'm only going to mention a couple because I've been talking about what's going on under the surface, and I specifically spoke about addictions. I want you to know that every Friday at noon, downstairs, there's a 12-step group that meets. And so if you or anyone you know might need that level of support to deepen in your surrender to God, who is compassionate and who is merciful, that's a lovely group. And we also have, is Jim Melvin here this morning? There's Jim. Jim leads a group that's with Celebrate Recovery. Jim, stand up just so people can see you. And if you're interested in learning more about this program, Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program that is beautifully, it's just a beautiful, beautiful process that is grounded in the faith. And I know Jim wouldn't be embarrassed if I shared this because he's shared this many times. Jim used to be a cook in the military, and he struggled with alcoholism. And this man right now, I can barely even say it without weeping. He is so free to recklessly love now because all of those attachments of alcoholism are gone, and it's beautiful. And so there are witnesses like this, even in our parish, even in today's age, when so many people can look at the church and say there's nothing going on there, I don't want any part of it, or to just call out the brokenness of our institutional past. It's absolutely beautiful. So my question for you to consider is, how is Jesus calling you? Do you not feel worthy? Okay, good. Neither did any of the apostles. They didn't feel worthy. That just puts you in good company with all of them, with all of the apostles, and it means that exciting things are in store. It doesn't mean there will be no suffering. It does mean the freedom to be fully alive in who you were created to be is a place of great compassion. And moments that might seem ordinary to us can be extraordinary for others. Don't underestimate the power of a kind word, a small gesture, a statement of gratitude. And when we orient our actions towards serving others, putting others first, not out of pride or self-interest, but motivated by the compassion of Jesus' heart, extraordinary things can happen. So I'll ask the question that I started at the beginning. Do you feel a little bit lost? And in what ways do you need to let Jesus lead you? Though it might seem initially painful, allow Jesus to show you your weaknesses and to show you where you ought to go. Jesus is, in truth, leading you on the narrow path home. It may be foggy, and you might be concerned about how you get back to that safe harbor, but know and trust that Jesus is leading you to the safe harbor of fulfillment of your own personal purpose, fulfillment of God's intentions for the world, a restoration of the brokenness that is all around us. When we do our small part, as ordinary as we are, the extraordinary can result. Because when we do His will, His kingdom comes. Amen.